You've tried meditation, energy work, plant medicine, crystals, manifestation techniques, all the right things. Yet somehow you still feel stuck in the same patterns, the same struggles, the same life. And the most frustrating part, you can't figure out why. Most people, even spiritual seekers, unknowingly sabotage their own evolution through a hidden psychological mechanism they couldn't see. Today, we will discover the invisible cage that's been holding you back, and finally understand why all your spiritual efforts haven't created the breakthrough you've been seeking. You'll learn the 3 unmistakable signs that you've fallen into this trap, understand why your mind has been keeping you there, and discover the counterintuitive approach that finally breaks the cycle. This isn't about adding more practices to your spiritual toolkit. It's about seeing what's been invisible to you all along. If you've ever felt that deeper sense of frustration, that feeling that something fundamental is missing despite all your inner work, this video will finally explain what's really happening. Let's start with the illusion of progress, that comforting sense that you're growing spiritually when you're actually just running in place. Think about your spiritual routine right now. You meditate each morning, you pull a tarot card, you journal your intentions, you repeat affirmations, you attend workshops and retreats. Your bookshelf is filled with spiritual texts. Your Instagram feed is curated with enlightened teachers. All of this feels like movement, doesn't it? It feels like you're doing the work. But here's the uncomfortable question. Is your life fundamentally different than it was a year ago? Are your relationships deeper? Is your sense of purpose clearer? Has your emotional reactivity truly diminished? For most people, the honest answer is no. They've accumulated more spiritual knowledge, but their day-to-day experience remains largely unchanged. This is the illusion of progress, mistaking movement for transformation. It's like walking on a spiritual treadmill. You're expending energy, working up a sweat, watching the miles tick by on the dashboard, but you're not actually going anywhere new. You're simply becoming more comfortable with being stuck. The most dangerous aspect of this illusion is that it feels good. The dopamine hit of a new insight, the community validation of spiritual language, the temporary calm after meditation. These experiences are real, but they're often just spiritual painkillers that mask the deeper stagnation without addressing its cause. So what's the hidden trap that keeps you stuck despite all your efforts? It's what mystical traditions have long called unconscious identity loops, or in modern terms, your ego's attachment to your spiritual journey itself. Here's the paradox that few spiritual seekers understand. Your mind has hijacked your spiritual path and turned it into another identity to protect. You've become attached to being the spiritual person, the healer, the empath, the awakening soul. And this new spiritual identity is just as limiting as any other identity. Think about it. Who would you be without your spiritual practices, without your crystals, your healing journey, your awakening story? Does that question make you uncomfortable? That discomfort reveals the trap. The ancient Hermeticists understood this perfectly. The Emerald Tablet warns, "That which you seek, you already are." But you forget this, and so become lost. Your mind has created a gap between where you are and where you should be spiritually, and then it sells you tools to bridge that gap. But the gap itself is the illusion. You're not actually trying to get anywhere. You're trying to recognize what's already here. The Buddha called this the false path, the mistake of turning awakening into a self-improvement project for the very ego that needs to be seen through. 2,500 years later, we're still falling into the same trap, just with more crystals and better Instagram filters. The mystic George Gurdjieff put it bluntly when he said most spiritual seekers are sleepwalkers in search of awakening. They're dreaming they're awake while remaining deeply asleep. They're seeking enlightenment while clutching their limitations. Gurdjieff observed that people become strangely comfortable in their suffering, what he called the strange satisfaction in dissatisfaction. There's a secret comfort in familiar pain, in the story of struggle, in the identity of the seeker. This explains why so many spiritual communities become stuck in endless seeking but never finding. As one Zen master put it, many seekers are just decorating their cages with spiritual posters. Think of it this way. If you've been identifying as someone on a healing journey for years, who would you be if you actually completed that journey? If your social media presence, your friendships, your self-image all revolve around spiritual seeking, what happens when there's nothing left to seek? This unconscious fear creates what psychologists call approach avoidance conflict. You move toward awakening while simultaneously backing away from it. You want transformation, but not the death of the you that wants transformation. The real reason you're not moving forward isn't external. It's not that you haven't found the right teacher, the right practice, or the right plant medicine ceremony. The blockage is identity-based resistance, your unconscious attachment to who you think you are. Ask yourself honestly, who would you be without your wounds, without your spiritual practices, without your struggle? Does that question create anxiety? That's the signal that you've found the trap. Our minds are masterful at creating the illusion of change while preserving our fundamental sense of self. You can meditate for decades while maintaining the same identity structure. You can attend hundreds of ceremonies while clinging to the same core beliefs. You can repeat thousands of affirmations while unconsciously rejecting their message. This is why many people can seem spiritually advanced, using all the right language, knowing all the concepts, while remaining fundamentally unchanged in their being. They've developed spiritual knowledge without spiritual transformation. Most people fear the unknown, even if it's better than their familiar suffering. The mind would rather maintain a known prison than venture into uncertain freedom. At least in prison, you know where the walls are. Freedom is terrifyingly boundless. How do you know if you're caught in this trap? Here are 3 unmistakable signs you're spiritually stuck. First, you're constantly learning but not changing. Your spiritual bookshelf is expanding, your workshop attendance is impressive, your vocabulary is evolving, but your life situation and emotional patterns remain largely the same. Knowledge has become a substitute for transformation. Think about how many spiritual concepts you understand intellectually versus how many you've truly embodied. There's often a vast gap between knowing and being. True transformation isn't about accumulating more information, it's about living differently from a different state of consciousness. Second, you're chasing external signs while ignoring internal knowing. You need confirmation from tarot cards, astrology readings, or spiritual teachers to validate what you already sense. You've outsourced your intuition to external authorities. The universe is always guiding you, but its most powerful guidance comes through your own direct experience, that quiet knowing beneath the noise. When you constantly seek external validation, you're actually expressing a fundamental distrust in your own inner wisdom. Third, you confuse comfort with clarity. Your spiritual practices make you feel better temporarily, but they don't fundamentally transform how you see reality. They're spiritual painkillers rather than spiritual surgery. Real transformation isn't always comfortable. In fact, genuine awakening often feels like falling apart before coming back together in a new configuration. If your spirituality never challenges your fundamental assumptions about yourself and reality, it's likely just spiritual entertainment. So how do you break free from this invisible trap? The answer might surprise you. It's not about doing more. It's about doing less, but with radical honesty. First, choose silence over stimulation. For 1 week, stop consuming spiritual content entirely. No books, podcasts, social media, or workshops. Create space for your own wisdom to emerge without constant external input. In that silence, notice what arises when you're not constantly filling your mind with more spiritual concepts. Second, prioritize action over affirmation. Instead of affirming how compassionate you are, perform 1 act of genuine compassion daily. Instead of visualizing abundance, give generously from what you already have. Embodiment transforms more deeply than imagination alone. Third, embrace emptiness over answers. When a question or challenge arises, resist the urge to immediately find a spiritual explanation or solution. Sit in the discomfort of not knowing. The greatest spiritual insights emerge not from filling the void, but from allowing it to remain open. Here's a simple but confronting challenge. What if you stopped all seeking for just 7 days? No meditation, no affirmations, no tarot, no spiritual books or videos. What if you just existed, paying attention to your life exactly as it is? What would you discover about yourself without your spiritual identity to hide behind? This isn't about abandoning your practices permanently. It's about breaking their hold on your identity so they can become tools for transformation rather than crutches for your ego. As we close, I want you to know there's no judgment here. We all get stuck. We all create comfortable prisons of identity, spiritual or otherwise. The key isn't to fight the trap, but to simply see it clearly. Awareness itself is transformative. Remember, you aren't actually stuck. You're just staring at a door you forgot you can open. That door has never been locked. Your freedom has never been more than one recognition away. The recognition isn't that you need to become more spiritual. It's that beneath all your seeking, beneath all your practices, beneath all your spiritual identities, you are already what you've been looking for. Remember, the trap isn't your enemy. Seeing it clearly is your liberation. Thanks for watching.